Hi there, Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thank you for watching Brother Be Well's Youth Substance Youth Prevention Series, supported by Elevate Youth California, funded through Proposition 64.
It's really great to see you guys again. I'm glad you made time for us to get together and talk about a little bit of the policy work that you did over the summer. We got the three of our youth, Axel, Joel, and Eric, and we're going to be talking about school substance use prevention policy. We did a lot of work around school-based policies that are focused on substance misuse, and these are three of the youth that we worked with this summer to develop some recommendations: Axel, Joel, and Eric. We've also got Joseph Mealy, one of our mental health clinicians, and Brother Be Well clinical advisors with us. Let's kick it off with you, Joel. Why is it, I want to ask a broad question. Why is it important for people in school districts to be talking about substance use? With some of what the media reports, it might seem obvious to some people, but I want to ask you if you're comfortable talking about it. What very direct experience do you have with substance use and maybe misuse as a youth in that public school system?
Yeah, glad I could join today's conversation. I definitely have some experience with some substances and, being young, being curious, being, experimental when you're in high school, when you're in middle school, all that stuff starts to come around, especially around, your friends. You have the opportunity to say yes or say no. I've, encountered those opportunities, and I have some, experience with some of those substances. And overall, I think we should talk about it because, at that age now, it seems like it's starting to, you're starting to confront these substances when you are younger than before. So now I just want to overall share my experience of how, I've dealt with that and how I've got over those substance abuse, and just overall advocating for other youth to not, indulge in those type of activities.
And if you're comfortable, Joel, let's put it right out there. Which substances with you are we talking about?
For me, it was like marijuana, and I've tried like probably Xanax and like some pills here and there. But that was just like a one-time thing. In high school, I had smoked a lot of marijuana just because of my, my whole thing where I was in the foster care system, and that is definitely around kids who are in the foster care system very early, and usually that's why kids get taken away from their families. And after going through that, I kind of learned that that wasn't for me, and it wasn't a great coping mechanism. So I'm here to share my experience and how to get through those difficulties.
I really appreciate it, Joel. What about you, Eric? Where you at with regard to substance use in the school system, and probably what led you to be interested in the summer academy, Brother Be Well Summer Academy?
Well, what I've noticed from school, I've been friends with people who have smoked, especially with like vapes. I know that's pretty big now, and especially stuff with nicotine in them. I was friends with people who do that, and my family too. As it sucks to say that some of them did partake in it. I never did it myself, but I've just been around it so much where I'm kind of like, hey, it's kind of normal now. And I feel like that shouldn't be the case from kids, especially in that it shouldn't be normal to see these sort of things, to be exposed to drugs. And I just, it's kind of weird to say that it's kind of like the norm now, especially in school, that everyone's practically doing it, and that everyone wants to do it and is openly doing this, and not really thinking about the long-term, like, health factors that play into when you do it for a long time, especially when you're so young and your body's still growing too, that it just like messes you up for the long term. So that's my take.
There's a part of me, before we pivot to you, Axel, Eric, there's a part of me that wants to have a little bit of pride in some of what you just said. I'm curious about whether you knew about those connections prior to this summer, because we had a master addictions counselor with us, Roland Williams, remember? And that brother could break it down. And I remember several sessions where I went in thinking I knew about those connections, and after half an hour with him thinking, boy, I barely scratched the surface with regard to knowledge of what a substance can really do to you, especially a young mind that's still developing and growing. Did you know all of that ahead of time, or did you just give us some of what you learned over the summer?
I learned about some of it ahead of time on how drugs can affect a young brain, but a lot of it was boosted. Like I knew the base knowledge. I could probably give you like just a quick 1-2 like little summary about what it was about. But with Roland like breaking it down as much as that he did, it kind of expanded it a little bit. I was kind of like, okay, so that's how that works. So like that's how it happened. So I'd say it was a little bit of prior knowledge and a good amount of the academy.
Yeah. Speaking of Roland, before we go to you, Axel, I talked to him 2 days ago, guys, and he was so sorry he couldn't be with us today. So he told me to tell all y'all hi, and he misses you too. Axel, talk to us a little bit about your intersections with substance use and maybe misuse, and in that school-based system, and also possibly with the youth that you're working with and mentoring.
Yeah, of course. Well, as we all know, this is a really strong topic to talk about with youth and at schools too, because right now at this time, it just keeps growing. We see a lot of youth at schools, even in middle schools, as Joel said, or as Eric said, sorry, using vapes, and then the older kids, they're getting like vapes in the form of like THCs or marijuana. They're smoking marijuana since like early ages, like middle school, high school. They're getting it from like their own classmates or like all their kids from all their schools. So we just see this issue like growing more and more, and I feel like it's very important for us to let our youth know like the consequences, like all of the things that can happen because of the misuse and just the use in general of anything. Like it's not just THC, just vaping. There's other drugs too, just like alcohol too. It's also another thing that's being more accepted between the youth right now because they want to seem cool. They want to be like grown-ups in a sense, as they say, that now they can drink alcohol, they're smoking, so they want to be like the cool kids. So I feel like this is a very bad issue that's just growing. And then I also see in my work, because I work with kids ranging from 7 to 18 years old. I see them both in Placer and Sacramento County. To be specific, in Placer, there is like a really bad issue going on with fentanyl. So there's a really strong fight going on about it because a lot of the youth, they're getting involved with that. At schools, they ditch school. They're doing poorly in their classrooms too. And then some of this other youth too, who are using it to cope as a coping mechanism, because at home, they're not doing good at home. They're either being mistreated or any like bad things are happening at home. So they're going outside where they can get in. They just keep using and using. So that's not going to help them in any way, shape, or form, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Why don't you jump on in here, Joseph Mealy, Associate Marriage and Family Therapist? Any of what you just heard, is it resonating with you compared with what you're hearing from clients that you're treating, young people that are in your care, and those substances that are so very dangerous, especially for young people?
Yeah, the guys are right on point with that. We are seeing more and more active use, and it's hard to pinpoint whether it's truly more use or if it's more awareness of the use. One of the things that's been helpful is universal screeners that a lot of districts are using, that's helping us identify some of the students that are actively using. What some of the national data and particularly the California data is suggesting is that from 7th grade to 11th grade, there's roughly about 30+% students that are reporting that they actively used within the last month, and especially within the last year, that they've used a substance, whether it's marijuana, an illicit drug, fentanyl, even tobacco products. So we are seeing that there's quite a few students that are actively using. So being able to address it in the school setting, I think is really one of the most proactive steps that we could take. And I think that that's not quite where we are yet. So my hope in regards to policy is that we start to develop a framework to where it becomes normalized and there's more access for students to receive care or support in the school setting.
I want to talk about, you touched on a really good point there, Joseph, that we're not there yet. We really should get there, but we're not there yet. And that, I know you're right. And it's at the same time, it surprises me. I remember when we were talking with Roland over the summer, I think it was about crack, the crack epidemic. And he just jumped in and no, opioids. We were talking about opioids generally. And he said opioids have been around since the 1980s. Opioids have been rampant in communities of color since the 1980s. So given that was 2 generations ago, that means the youth that are dealing with drugs now, their grandparents had drugs in the schools and in communities. Why is it taking so long for us to finally get it and say we got to address this in the schools, in the places where students are challenged, they're facing some hard issues at home. They bring them to school, they're struggling, and they're going to turn to substances. Why is that taking society so long to get that? Joseph.
Simple answer, I would say, is stigma. I think we're starting to turn a corner when it comes to mental health and it being a little more acceptable to speak out about it. And I think celebrities, professional athletes have really helped us turn that corner. The next step is really the substance use. So I think that a lot of policymakers, maybe even school districts, superintendents, there's still some stigma associated with it that people want to distance from.
Axel, do you think he's on the money? You're dealing with a lot of youth. Is there still stigma around drug use? I know if you pay attention to what's in a lot of mass media and even what the local news covers, it's almost like it's not. I would almost argue that some people think it's kind of sexy and kind of cool. So you think stigma is what's holding us back? I think you're right, Joseph. I just hadn't thought about it, but I want to hear from our youth what they think about that.
Yeah, I did think so. I mean, some of our youth, as I said, they do by using stuff like that, they feel like they have like they're the cool kids. They're more powered. They're more grown-ups. So of course they're gonna think, like as you said, that it's sexier to be using this and that. For example, they'll be pulling out their vape pens out of nowhere and just be smoking it on the street, thinking they're like the coolest kids ever. But we know that that's just for us, that we know what's happening, what that is doing to their bodies, their brains that are just developing right now. That's nothing good for them whatsoever. Like we know the truth, we know what's going on behind it. Like we know that that's something that should be taken away from their area, like even the outside, stay inside of the school, outside, that we need more, we need another approach for them, like not just saying, oh, this is bad for you, you guys shouldn't be taking this. We should have some other options outside of school too, because once they go out of school, no one's watching them, none of the professors are watching them, the security guards, principals. Like once you leave the school, then you're on your own, and that's where they go to parks, to other friends, to other places, so where there's easy access for all of the substances.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? Do you think we're on the right track here? Is stigma around these substances what's holding administrators back? I hope even if one administrator listens to this conversation and they say we're gonna eliminate the stigma around this, let's just put it out there. I think, frankly, shining a light on an issue is the best way to eliminate stigma, right? So we got to start talking about it and stop pretending that it's not there. What do you think, Eric?
I liked what Joseph and Axel mentioned and you as well, when you mentioned that there's sort of like an allure when it comes to taking drugs and when doing all these sorts of things, because every kid wants to feel like they're doing something, no one wants to really admit that something bad for them, something that makes them feel good is bad for them. So that's sort of like a big thing, a big allure. It's like everyone's doing it. I want to partake. I want to do it as well. And they want something that kind of gives them a sense of, like, I don't know, rebelliousness. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Give them that sort of feeling, and to give them a sense of power in a way. Be like, if I do this, I'm like with everyone else, or I'm fitting in. I'm doing all these sorts of things. So, it's scary when you think of it like that, because it's kind of like the as much as I like it, the sheep mentality, where like everyone kind of gets herded in by this one single thing that they all like, and everyone starts going slowly until eventually everyone's caught up, everyone's hooked, no one wants to get off of it. And I feel like, again, there's like a big stigma around it. It's like no one wants to talk about it, but it's happening. It's like everyone wants to keep it a little hush. Yeah. But it's happening all around the world.
Joel, appreciate it, Eric. Joel, I'm gonna throw this to you in a second. You guys can help me out though. I'm blanking right now. What's the name of the drug that you administer if you think somebody's having an overdose? What's it called?
Narcan.
Narcan. Thank you. I was talking to a parent within the last 6 months, and they were resisting Narcan in the school. Now, what I've learned of Narcan, I didn't know anything about it until 3 years ago when I started working with Brother Be Well. So I've learned all about it, right? Well, I've learned as much as you can learn in 3 years. She was resisting Narcan being in the schools because she thought that Narcan was going to encourage students to use drugs. If they know that there's easy access to something that can save their life, then they won't. And I can't tell you guys, I just shook my head. I was like, so you're not going to have something in the school that could save your son's or your daughter's life for fear of what they might do, when we know what a lot of students are doing. We know students are using drugs. We know they are using alcohol. So why wouldn't you want to have something in the school that would help with that? And I wonder now, if I could go back and have that conversation based on what you guys just shared, maybe it was stigma. Maybe that's what was driving her. She didn't want to think about her student, her kid in a school that was promoting, in her own words, drug use. What do you think about that, Joel?
I think that's a little crazy, actually. Like, I've never heard of that. I mean, it's interesting to hear. I understand the perspective, but at least have the Narcan in the school. But I would say don't advertise it so these kids can, think that they would be able to save their lives. But definitely have it on campus, because even if you say that you don't have it, people are still going to use that. Kids are still going to use that. Youth are still going to indulge in those, activities and substances, especially if there's families doing it. If, people around them are encouraging them to do it, the mainstream media, the music, all the rappers, the people who have money, the people who have status, and, the celebrities. So, us youth, we always look at those people like they have superpowers and, they're Superman and they're the heroes. But yet, they don't understand how mentally it is affecting the youth in schools.
Yeah. As long as you got the mic and the camera, Joel, why don't you talk about a little bit, from your perspective, what's the best way in which? So we're looking at schools, according to Joseph, I think I'm speaking for you. We are seeing schools begin to put resources into place to address a little bit. They're starting. So as schools are just rolling this out, you don't have a lot of money, so you got to maximize what dollars you're spending. Joel, what's the best way you can think of in which you can get the information out there to the student population about substance use and misuse concerns, issues, resources?
I would definitely say to have clubs and have everyone, go in the auditorium, announce it, have a presentation to, talk to these kids, talk to the youth who are, who are potentially using, and oftentimes, especially to the people who do get caught either smoking weed in school, under substances at school, talk to them and tell them that these are the services if they need any, and definitely welcome them with open arms.
Appreciate it. What about you? I'm going to ask all of our young people that same question. And Joseph, you're nodding, so I got a feeling you got some ideas about what schools can do too. What about you, Eric? What do you think about the best way, the best avenue for getting information out about substance use policies?
When I think about, opposed to like other subjects such as mental health, when it comes to substance abuse, it's hard because when you think of different, like, how do I say it, ways of going about this, is that they've tried scaring the youth, I'd say, but it's to the point, and I think I talked to this about someone where they're sort of desensitized to it at this point, where it's kind of like, it's whatever. But I would say that a way that they could do it is like probably partner up with like a local, how do I say it, like local paramedics or local, like local police departments that would be willing to help. So I feel like that'd be an interesting way, because if you were to, like, if you hear your teacher talk about it, like talk about, oh, don't do this, don't do that's bad. But if you would hear from like a sense of authority, that'd probably give it away, like, okay, maybe, and they would actually tell you how bad is it. Again, not exactly scaring them, but just kind of giving them like, okay, this is what it is, and this is how it is. I feel like that'd also be a pretty good way to get their attention. So partnering with local like community members to advertise for it.
That's a great suggestion. Two different suggestions. Really, really great suggestion there, Eric. You mentioned something you said that reminded me of, I think it was a film that was out. I'm going to really date myself on this one. I was in high school. It was called Scared Straight. And they went into penitentiaries, as I recall, and talked about drug use and how drugs were killing people. Are y'all familiar with this? it was a classic at the time. And I remember watching that, and I'm lucky. Other than marijuana and cigarettes and alcohol, I almost ran into a problem of my own with alcohol, but it wasn't when I was so young. I was already in my 30s then. But it really made me think twice. I would say that there was a lot in that film, that made me think I got to figure out another way to get through some of these challenges, because that is messing brothers up. People are dying of that, and that was 40 years ago. So drugs now are so much more accessible. You had to work. When I was a young person, you had to really work hard to get your hands on something. Now it seems to be much more accessible. Axel, what do you think about that? What's the best way in which to disseminate that information there?
So for me, I'll take one point from Joel and one from Erick. Like, for example, having a local organization who either focuses on this subject or at least works along with other people to be able to help youth on the subject on substance abuse. And then either have it at the school's auditorium so the whole school can see it at the same time, or also have a more private conversation, like have a speaker who has the experience coming to each one of the classrooms and talk to them individually, or to each classroom individually, not to each kid, or if they can, to each youth, and that'll be even better for the ones who they think that they might be using. So they can get more like a live sense to the experience of what can happen, what goes down whenever they do use the substance, like the alcohol, marijuana, fentanyl, or any other thing. And because I feel like whenever they see it from someone who has experienced, someone who did use it, someone who was in those shoes, and they absorb it even more, and they feel it more like, oh, this is like a real thing that's happening right now. And then if I don't do this, then that might happen to me. Also, another thing that we do, and with the youth that we work with this other organization called YEGA up in Auburn. And they do take some youth, 12 to 18, to jail. So the youth that are going through some things like acting out or things like that, as they call it, some of the parents, they sign them up for this field trips to go to jails, and then they get the real treatment over there. They eat the food from jail. They interact with the inmates, so they get the whole experience of what can happen to them if they still go through the path that they're going through right now.
Yeah, powerful. And when you just were talking, Axel, I was reminded again of Roland in a way, and I've known him now for almost 2 years. His own personal experience, when you talk to somebody that's walked that walk, it takes all of the you can understand, mentally and intellectually what drugs will do to you. When you talk to someone who looks you in the face and they say, I got high with a friend of mine and we both fell asleep, and then my friend didn't wake up. And that's part of Roland's story. He got high with somebody, and the dude, they both passed out. I think it was heroin at that time. And the other guy just didn't wake up. And when you think about someone that you really care about, we tend to party with people you like, right? So you're hanging out with your buddy, your best friend, whatever, and then y'all get high. And just because of maybe the amount that he takes in, or maybe physiology is a part of it, Joseph can maybe help us with that. I wish we had one of our medical professionals here that could tell us. But some different people are going to react different ways, and you could do the same amount of a drug, and one person is going to die, and you're not. And you don't know. It's a game of Russian roulette. You really don't know if you're going to be the one or not. So I think that kind of, putting it in students' faces might really get in there. We're running out of time. Once again, we always run out of time during these conversations. So my final question, I think, for you guys, and I want to ask this question. We've talked about parents and we've talked about youth. We haven't touched on, for this conversation, faculty, staff, teachers. How important is it that they understand what's going on? And then what's the best way to get those teachers engaged? Let's start with you on that one, maybe, Erick. I know I tend to pick on you a lot. I don't mean to, Erick, but why don't you start us off? What's the best way to get teachers in that loop and make sure they understand what's going on, and then they're trained to help and advocate and steer youth in the right direction when they need to?
Man, you see, when I think about that, I think back to the teachers that I've had and the way they kind of informed me to steer like well beyond that path and to kind of avoid it as much as possible. But I think it's always important for teachers to be informed on it. I think the best thing that I can think of is that when my teacher would tell me of trainings that they would have and that they would hold for the teachers to be well informed about different types of drugs, different things to do when a person's going through a crisis, So I feel like continuing to do that, continuing to keep teachers in the loop with like, oh, this is what's going to happen. This is what it looks like. So I feel like something like that with keeping teachers always sort of in the circle. So when they notice it, they'll eventually, because when it comes to the parents, which is like the first line, you always look towards the teachers to kind of come back to, because that's the person you're leaving your kid with for like what, half of the day, 8 to 12 hours, 8 hours out of the day, depending what they do. Whether the kids stay after school, if they're stuck with that one teacher, that's who you trust with your kid. So keeping them informed is probably like the best thing for to sort of have teachers help.
Appreciate that, Eric and Joel. I want to include both of you guys. Do you have any additional thoughts on how to get or keep teachers engaged in this process and keeping kids in school off of drugs, frankly?
I would definitely say for faculty, staff, and teachers to try to talk to the youth, come to them with open arms, and offer them suggestions and resources if they need any help, and just try to point them in the right directions. Oftentimes, I feel that people who are involved with substance abuses, sometimes people or authority can be a little harsh to them and kind of mean, you would say. I would definitely say just try to work with them, because you never really know what they're going through or what their mental health is like, and just, try to help them overall.
Really appreciate it, Joel. How about you, Axel? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, for me, just like Eric, I feel like a lot of training would be really useful, because right now, drugs right now are very different from how they were before. Like right now, you can hide something that looks like a pen, like the one that you use for your everyday school, your notes. So for teachers to be able to recognize all of these signs, like for kids whenever they are on a substance, it's very important for them to know like the signs, so they can be able to treat it or talk to them and see if they can help them one way or another, or refer them to the specialist who can. For example, like students, I know in a lot of schools they're teaching them about health and safety classes, but we don't know if the teachers have the same experience, if they have the same knowledge that we are learning. So if we know it, some of the kids, they're still going to do it even if they're taking the classes, but if they come into a crisis and then they overdose or something like that, we don't know if the teachers know the same things that we do, and if they're going to be able to act on it and be able to help the student.
We appreciate that, Axel. We haven't touched on it yet here today, but we know teachers are dedicated. We know they want to help our youth. A lot of times their heart's in the right place. They just don't have access to information. They just don't know what to do. So we want to put that out there. And that's what this conversation and a lot of our resources are about here, Brother Be Well, getting those teachers and faculty members up to speed and in a good position. Before I turn it over to you to close this out, Joseph, I forgot to mention that a lot of that school policy work that we did, and also with regard to mental health as well, but for this conversation, substance abuse, Paul Lee was our summer intern over the summer, and he led these 3 young men and 5 others in putting together a really comprehensive list of school policy recommendations. So we want to thank Paul. He couldn't be with us tonight either, but I want to thank Paul for that. Joseph, take us home. What's the best way we can get the teachers plugged into that team that is going to take, they say it takes a village. It takes a lot of us supporting our youth and having them in a good position so that they don't succumb to the pressures in some cases and allure of using drugs. What do you think?
I think the guys hit it right on the head. It's really teacher education, but I think it starts from the top down. So teachers kind of go with the flow with whatever the district or the administration direction is. So I think it starts at the top. We need our superintendents all the way down to highlight the importance and the emphasis of being able to understand what's happening out there, what the teachers are experiencing in the classroom, helping teachers to have the education piece to identify as a student tired or are they intoxicated, and what the protocol is for that. And that's going to be different at every school site, every district. But the education needs to be there. So utilizing in-services, professional development meetings to really bring in folks and help the teachers increase their knowledge and awareness of what's happening and potentially in their classroom. So if it starts from the top down, if we can get administrators, superintendents to be able to say, hey, this is what's happening, let's throw the stigma out the window, let's really protect our students, then it'll trickle down and the teachers will be more involved and more educated.
Really appreciate that perspective, Joseph, and thank you for helping us close it on out. Joseph Mealy is an associate marriage and family therapist with HearYou.org. He's a clinical advisor to us here at Brother Be Well. Thank you, sir, once again for your contributions. And my young brothers, Axel, Joel, Eric, really thank y'all for setting some time aside. You did a fantastic job this summer, you and your cohorts in that program, and I want to thank you for being with us tonight. Thanks a lot. Want to thank you for also checking this video out, and if you've enjoyed it at all and want to hear a little bit more or see a little bit more about what Brother Be Well is up to, go to our website, brotherbewell.com. We're a membership-supported service supporting the behavioral health needs of boys and men of color. You can check it all out at brotherbewell.com. You can join as a member for free right now. You can sign up for our blog right now. Just give us your email address, and we'll take care of you. And when conversations just like the one we just had go live, you'll be among the first to hear about it. Do all of that at brotherbewell.com. My name, Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. It's been great to be with you. You know I love it. You know I'm looking forward to next time. Till next time, take care of yourself and take good care of somebody else too. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Valentin Velasquez. I'm 22 years old. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I was born and raised in the neighborhood of Little Village. I am proud to say that I have been taking part of the 2023 summer cohort with Brother Be Well. When I first heard about it from my job, I found it interesting in what they had to offer on the website and the cohort that they were starting during the summer. I'm a sports mentor at New Life Centers. New Life Centers is a nonprofit organization that helps bridge and build relationships and communities. Being young and unexperienced had some challenges when I first started my sports mentoring position back in January of 2022. From when I first started to where I am now, I can definitely say with confidence that I have been growing as a mentor, as a man, as a father, as a friend, and as a co-worker. Brother Be Well has been really helpful with meeting new mentors, meeting young men like myself, wanting to better ourselves, with breaking cycles, with adding new tools to use and adding them to our toolkit. I have never been more confident than I am now with talking about men's mental health, and that's all thanks to Brother Be Well. And it also has been pushing me to start my own men's group in my neighborhood, just to let the young man in the neighborhood know that it's not only important to physically be healthy, but mentally be healthy up here as well. And it's just been a good experience with just having consistency with men that I do not know, but I was able to interact with every week, every day, 4 times a week. And we're just building, we're strangers at first, but we built a bond, we built a family during this time of us being together. And I will recommend other young men to be part of the next cohort.